My name is Chiranta Amarasinghe. I am a civil and human rights activist in Sri Lanka. Currently, you may be aware that Sri Lankan protesters at Ranil Gama, or also known as Gota Gama, the peaceful protesters at that location at Galle Face in Colombo has been attacked by now it seems that it has been attacked by a state terrorism. Now the situation is as such in Sri Lanka that people are being attacked by the police and military for peacefully holding their protests against the Ranil Wickremesinghe government. It is very clear what they expect. They expect their unleashing of violence. They expect the protesters and the people to be violent against the forces and cause a huge situation of chaos in the country. I urge all protesters and the people to act with restraint at this crucial moment, because Ranil Wickremesinghe is completely off his mind. To be very short, he is off his mind. Mr. Wickremesinghe, who was sworn in yesterday as the president, had stated to the international media that the ousting of the former president is not a democratic thing. Protests in Sri Lanka were started soon after the financial crisis in the country, which the current president himself admitted that was a created issue, that the financial crisis was created. Therefore, I wish to bring to the attention of the international community. Now, a lot of people are asking why this is being said in English. මම මේක ඉංග්‍රීසියෙන් කියන්නේ ජාත්‍යන්තරයේ අවධානය ලබා ගැනීමට අවශ්‍ය කාරණාවක් නිසායි. So I just wanted to explain that. This is being said in English because I want to capture the attention of the international community. Right now I have informed Amnesty International about this issue. As soon as the information got to me at around 1 a.m. I have informed Amnesty International soon after. Now the problem here is that the people of the international community don't understand what is happening in Sri Lanka. Mr. Wickremesinghe, who was sworn in as the 8th president, was actually put on that position by the Rajapakshas. Mahinda Rajapaksa clearly campaigned to bring Ranil Wickremesinghe as the president. It is also very clear that Namal Rajapaksa, the supposed next to be president, was at the forefront internally. He was internally at the forefront at Gota Go Home, that means against Gotabaya Rajapaksa. There is a big rift within the Rajapaksa family, which led to the Gota Go Home situation and the escalation of the economic crisis, which is now very clear it was created. Now these Rajapakshas, they expect they know that they cannot. Now when the former president was here, Gotabaya Rajapaksa was here, he never tried to initiate any violence, coordinated violence like this. He was very restraintful because he knew the international pressure that it's going to create, and it is going to damage the Rajapaksa family image. So now what has happened is Mahinda brought Ranil to power in a very coordinated political scheme, so that Ranil Wickremesinghe, who has no future in politics, he has committed political suicide by becoming part of the Rajapaksas. He has no future party. He has used this dying old man to instill state terrorism on the protesters. This is what has happened right now. So you may hear so many stories of what is happening, but actually what has happened is Mahinda Rajapaksa is the mastermind behind all this, including Go Home, because from the internal information I have received and what was posted on social media from the people who were with Rajapaksa, it is very clear that Gotabaya Rajapaksa was an interim person to take up that post until Namal Rajapaksa was suited. It was also clearly seen in the 2021 year, last year, it was that it is possible, given this situation, it is possible that Ranil Wickremesinghe will be put as an interim person until Namal Rajapaksa could assume power. So basically, what the international community needs to understand is that this is a coordinated conspiracy against Sri Lanka by the Rajapaksas, which led to the financial crisis, which was created by the Rajapaksas, which led to the ousting of the former president, which led to people coming out. I mean, this was not the people coming out was not coordinated. People came out because of the coordinated financial crisis. So when the people came out, they exploited the people to get the former president out. Now Mahinda then came back into parliament, used his influence, used his jugglery, and he got the Ranil Wickremesinghe to the post of president to start an era of suppression, human rights violations, and use of excessive force and police and army brutality. This is what has happened. So until the international community understands what the Rajapaksas game is, this is not going to end. And I appeal now, IMF, their exit policy to get this country back on track is the IMF. Viable, only viable option is the IMF, the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, the United States, India, and so on. Now all these parties, what I ask as a human rights activist is, are these parties ready to sponsor state terrorism? I think the short answer would be no. They are not. And why is Ranil Wickremesinghe doing this? Then why is the army behaving like this? Why is the state behaving like this? Because they don't want a solution to the problem. This president is not a democratically elected by he is not a president elected by a mandate, a democratic mandate. So basically, we are talking about a president, a rogue president, who has been placed on that platform by the Rajapaksas to do the dirty part of suppression, brutality, and human rights violations. So going forward, I expect the IMF, the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, the United States and India, and all the other parties who are, including the EU, who has been, I was surprised. Basically, they were like, oh, the new president, we hope to see the new president. What? And I would expect these people to respond to this in a coordinated and methodological manner and explain to us how they are going to respond to this. Because are you going to sponsor state terrorism and help a government that is going against the people, violating human rights, using army and police brutality? Are you going to tolerate the use of military to suppress civilians and civil protests and violation of human rights? I think the Sri Lanka army has already so many things on their back, right? So many violations on their back. Are you going to stand and look at it and make a tweet and do nothing about it? And I ask whether the people of United States, including President Biden, do you approve this type of irrational behavior against peaceful protests, against a problem that had been created by the very people, the very politicians, the people in Sri Lanka request for a change. People in Sri Lanka request for transparency and accountability and democracy. That is what they want. That is what the protests are about. That is why they say Ranil go home, because Ranil is not a president with a mandate. He doesn't even have a bloody mandate for his own proper party. He didn't. So basically, please understand that media had been attacked today. Early morning around 1 a.m. this whole fiasco started. I was awakened about 1:30. I'm in a safe place, but I was awakened by this whole thing because so many people started calling me asking for help. So right now what the international community needs to do is, respond, because this Ranil Wickremesinghe, he was at the forefront of the 88-89 calamity. He aggravated the youth. He went against the youth. He used the state apparatus against the youth. He was accused in the Batalanda case, which was not proven because the evidence committed suicide. Right? The evidence, people who are going to give evidence against Ranil Wickremesinghe committed suicide, and so the Batalanda incident against Wickremesinghe he was not accused. He walked away from the case. But right now he is using the same methodologies against the youth, against the protesters, and they are going to cause a huge commotion. The Sri Lankan people, with the protesters at Goldface, were in discussions and were ready to almost hand over the presidential secretariat back to the government after they took it over on July 9th. So basically this was an unnecessary act of provocation. Why now? I heard the Canadian ambassador in Sri Lanka asking why now. Why now is because now the actions taken by the military or the state does not reflect on the Rajapaksas, because the Rajapaksas are planning to bring Namal Rajapaksa back into power. Their original plan had been to get Ranil to do the suppression and do everything, the dirty work, so that, because he has no future anyway, so he will be protected by the Rajapaksas later on, benefited by the Rajapaksas later on. But then the people will stand up and say, we need the Rajapaksas. This is the political game. They are going to create a government. They are going to create a president wanted to create, and they have created a president worse than Gotabaya Rajapaksa, so that people will say Gotabaya Rajapaksa is better. This is the same ideology that was used by when Gotabaya Rajapaksa was such a failure. People said that the former president Maithripala Sirisena is better. So it's a game they are playing, a political game with lives of the people. And also to state that this Aragalaya, or the people's revolution, the peaceful revolution and the protests, the agitations are not caused by political parties. It is caused by an economic crisis that was created by the Rajapaksas. Until the economic crisis persists, it will persist, the people will be out. And we all know there had been zero effort by the government to ensure transparency, accountability and fiscal discipline in the country. The rupee is pinged. They are printing money. This is not going to end well. So I expect the IMF to be very clear on one thing. Don't let the funds of the democratic countries be used against the people of Sri Lanka and the peaceful protests of Sri Lanka for human rights violations via state terrorism. Don't let that happen. I urge the US government also the same. I urge the Asian Development Bank and the World Bank the same. Don't let the funds of the international community, international democratic countries be used against the people, peaceful protests and people of Sri Lanka. That is my request, because they must condemn state terrorism. First, they must ensure that every dollar they give as a loan, as a bailout, is used for the economic development of the people and not for human rights violations. So start up a mechanism, and also it is very clear that the people need to go for an election. This country needs to go for an election. This is the only way forward to ensure political stability. This is a parliament that does not reflect, it is very clear that the parliament does not reflect the aspirations of the people, and therefore if the IMF and World Bank and ADB and the UN, the EU and all the other democratic countries don't stand firm with regard to the requirement of a people's mandate before anything, there will be more chaos in Sri Lanka and the world will be the funder. Do you want that to happen? So that is what I finally ask. So my name is Chiranta Amarasinghe from Colombo, Sri Lanka. I'm a human rights and civil and human rights activist in this country. So I hope that everything is clear of what is happening. From the information we have right now, there has been a brutal attack on the peaceful protesters at Gota Gogama or Ranil Gogama, which is at Golface already. So please understand and act accordingly. That is what I request. Thank you very much.